because of the t-shirt? No, I don't think anyone's going to think I'm writing a cat western. But that's kind of an amusing idea. Maybe for the next project. No, not for the next project. Good morning. As you might be able to see, the dawn is starting to rise up over there, getting an early start. And as I woke up, I was reminded of a wonderful John Cage quote. When you begin working, everyone is in your studio. Your friends, your enemies, the art world, especially your own ideas. But the more you continue to paint, slowly but surely they begin to leave, one by one, until you are left completely alone. Then, if you're lucky, even you leave. And like the quote, what I'm going to talk about now is, and what I've talked about before in the earlier videos, is not about content, but it's really about process. It's for those of you who are invested and committed to long-term projects, long-haul projects, whatever those may be, and perhaps just even though those processes are completely different for every individual, every artist, every piece of work, perhaps experiencing a little of what I'm going through will be helpful in your own endeavors, because as we move into a culture that is predominantly, at least on the surface, sort of ephemeral based, these quick little moments, many of which are extremely entertaining and beautiful and insightful, they still are very different from that kind of work that involves a great deal of commitment, a great deal of time over a long period of time. So, by way of a quick review, in 2020, I finished the first draft of a new novel. It's a Western, and you could say it has a bit to do with Utah. At the time, I figured the second draft would take me about 6 months. So yes, it's quite often the case that you get things wrong. In fact, I'm just finished the second draft, and so it took me well over a year and a half, closer to 2 years, in fact. And it was a very intense experience, but also a very beautiful experience. The second draft is about that kind of focus that John Cage is referring to, whereby everything you thought you knew, which was presented in the first draft, begins to depart. And when your own ideas begin to depart, that's when the revelations occur. And what's revealed really are themes that you didn't anticipate, themes that the first draft only barely limbs out, but in the second draft begins to take form in a very vibrant, sort of enthralling way, as to be enthralled. But with that comes responsibilities. So as you begin to understand this work on its own terms, not your own terms, it then begins to present you with promises that must be kept, burdens that must be carried, responsibilities that must be honored. And so, at least for me, my experience was that the second draft took a lot longer, but in itself, it in itself was a great journey. What lies ahead now, prepare yourself, is actually 3 more drafts. The last one is a polish, and the 5th one, and the 4th one will be more intensely devoted to layout. The 3rd one that I'm just commencing now is probably the most terrifying. In fact, it is non-linear in spirit and in practice. It is not about beginning at the start and heading all the way through the work until the end. It's about moving through those themes that you've discovered and honoring their progression. It can be entirely banal. A decision that you've made earlier on about a dress being yellow and changing that dress to green will involve nothing more than seeking out wherever that dress appears and changing the color. And that can be done very quickly. But other things, can be much more complex. And it is at this point that the author should know the work so well that they can move in a three-dimensional way all over the work very, very quickly. So you can hop around from chapters, you can seek out those moments that need attention, and in developing those moments, and we're talking about maybe a few pieces of dialogue, maybe a snippet of verse, that in effect will change 4 or 5 things all over the book. And you know that material so well that you can move instantly to those places and make those amends. And it's also the most exciting draft because it's where a great deal of pressure, if you will, of sort of gem forming intensity takes place, and it's exhilarating, as it can be boring, as it can be terrifying. Make no mistake, the third draft is where many an artist lose themselves, because you are presented with the absolute finite, something that can be accomplished in a mere moment, and the infinite. You can suddenly lose yourself in toying with commas, in toying with quotation marks, and you can become so lost in the infinite details that are presented to you, the infinite possibilities of details, that you never get out of it. You never finish it. And so I'm very excited about what lies ahead, but I also know that there are real traps, and I say this with great seriousness. It is where you can put your own mental state in peril. The kind of intense contemplation of these infinite moments that you have to navigate can really start to possess you and defeat you. You have to move through it, and in some ways it begins to approach the most profound experience of any artistic endeavor, whereby the completion of this moment, if you will, requires some faith. It requires some sense that goes beyond the world and the work, that somehow in this moment, after years and years of working on the work, you will arrive at what's right for the work. And so part of it has to be instinctual. Part of it is completely bound by the responsibility, the duties you have, and then at the same time completely unbound, completely free. Here's the moment where improvisation can present itself as an option, as as a whimsical moment that suddenly appears, um, like Athena upon the beach where you are bedraggled and nearly drowned, and raises you up and says, this is what you shall do. Do not leave. Do not fear. I am your guardian goddess, if you will. And the time is to now is the time to keep going. And whatever metaphor you want, it does feel as if it becomes a spiritual process in a way, because what you are listening to is no more yourself, but solely the work. And this I've said thus far, but after years and years of working on that work, the work isn't merely the work, but you are listening to what speaks through the work. And that is the discovery and the responsibility and the honor that you have. You are no longer honoring your own process. You are no longer honoring your own labor. You are honoring the voice that has taken a lifetime or lifetimes to find place in your work, and that is what you listen to. In terms of just the process, I have broken down the third draft into roughly 9 parts. Those are completely arbitrary, but they seem manageable bites. So I will create something like 9 question marks, and you can note my progress, because I will slowly erase those question marks. I'm also thinking that I won't shave until I finish this draft. So that will be my reminder to myself of where I'm at, and to others where I'm at. And I think there's a possibility I will reach the end of this draft by the end of the year. That seems a little ambitious, so it could take me a couple of months more. I don't want to spend more than that. Too much time becomes it's a sign that the ego is now returning, and the work is becoming more and more opaque and mute, and that is not a good sign. So there's a bit of celerity that's required here, and in that sense it's invigorating, because each day is a bit like a performance. And so I will likely see you again in the new year, and I wish you a great fall, a safe fall, and may you imbue the holiday moments ahead with the spirit of affection, kindness, and charity to those you love, and those around you, and those you don't know.